welcome to a late night Las Vegas edition of the Post-Gazette Penguins podcast. I'm your host, King Jemison, recording late Thursday here in the desert. It's already well into Friday back home in Pittsburgh, but the Pens are coming off a 6-2 drubbing just across the street from me at T-Mobile Arena at the hands of the Vegas Golden Knights. We're going to talk about that loss, which was the Penguins' 5th in 6 games, and look at how the Pens have performed without Evgeni Malkin and Sidney Crosby. But before we do, I want to remind you that this show is presented by FanDuel, where you can bet on all the NHL action. A particular note on Friday's slate for the Pens is the Kings at Islanders contest at 7 p.m. The Islanders can move into sole possession of second place in the Metro with a win, and FanDuel gives them minus 138 odds to do just that. And the playoff position is becoming a bit precarious for the Pens. Like I just said, the Islanders can pass them for second in the Metro, but more importantly, the Columbus Blue Jackets are surging. They had an overtime loss to Florida tonight, but that still brought them within 2 points of Pittsburgh. And the Blue Jackets are currently in 4th in the Metro, but have been really, really good under new head coach Rick Bowness, and certainly a threat to knock the Penguins out of their playoff spot if they're not able to right the ship. So in tonight's game, it was just pretty ugly performance for the Pens on the road. This was a Vegas team that they just beat 5-0 back on March 1st. 12 days later, very different story. Frankly, Pittsburgh did a lot of good things in this game. They controlled the puck for much longer than the Golden Knights did. They had more scoring chances if you look at the Sportlogic data, but their mistakes were really, really loud, and they can ill afford those. And Vegas really showed the offensive talent that they have, that they're able to take those mistakes and quickly turn them into goals. Felt like every one of their goals was sort of a quick strike offense situation. But it showed some of the defensive responsibility issues that the Pens have been having at a time when they can ill afford them, playing without Malkin and Crosby. And this game was certainly not Artur Shilov's best night. He only saved 11 of the 16 shots he faced, his worst performance in quite a while. Now, those goals pretty much all came on grade A looks. It was not like he was giving up really soft goals, but he just needed to make a couple of those saves to kind of keep his team in the game. Like, yes, they put him in a bad spot, but if he could have bailed them out a couple times, I think it might have looked a little bit different. And it was a strange game in that some of the characters that we've come to trust the most on this Penguins team, like Parker Wotherspoon, like Connor Dewar, had really, really rough, uncharacteristically undisciplined nights. Wotherspoon had a couple of turnovers, one of which hit a referee that can't really blame him too much, and one of which Ville Koivunen could have maybe helped him out with by not getting bumped off the puck. But in both cases, those Wotherspoon turnovers led very quickly to Vegas goals. And then Connor Dewar had one of his most brutal plays of the season, turning it over in the neutral zone, passing it right to Mitch Marner, who came down, had a great give and go, and that led to a beautiful Marner goal. And that was kind of the defining play of the game, I would say, that Vegas took a 3-1 lead on that Marner goal. And even though the Pens would get one back before the end of the period, I think that sucked some of the life out of a Pens team that has been really pushing hard to make these comeback wins, or at least steal a point in comebacks. It's something they did successfully for a win Sunday against Boston and successfully for a point in a shootout loss Tuesday against Carolina. But they simply were not able to really get within striking distance for a comeback in this game. So I don't think that really merits too much more attention. It was a rough night on the road without 2 of your best players playing against a very solid Vegas team, albeit one that has not been performing particularly well recently. But I think what's more worth discussing is just sort of how the Pens have now looked in their 4 games playing without Malkin and Crosby. Malkin has now served 4 of the 5 games of his suspension for slashing Rasmus Dahlin back on March 5th against Buffalo. Sort of a similar game, and that Buffalo really took it to the Pens despite Pittsburgh doing some good things, but just simply making some mistakes at the wrong time. Well, that mistake cost Malkin 5 games, and he's going to miss one more Saturday against Utah before he's eligible to return Monday against Colorado. Meanwhile, Crosby, he's been out since the Olympic break with the lower body injury he suffered in Milan. He has been skating recently, including at both of the team's morning skates, Tuesday and Thursday. I saw him doing some contact drills after the morning skate on Thursday. He was working hard with Kevin Hayes and Evgeni Malkin and some of the staff, definitely doing some not only vigorous skating, but taking some bumps and playing through that. So he certainly appears close to a return, but hard to say exactly when that will be. It certainly looks possible that it could be on this road trip on Saturday against Utah, or Monday against Colorado, or even the following Wednesday against Carolina. But while those guys have been out, the Pens have lost 3 of 4 games, getting points at the same time in 3 or 4 of those as well, because 2 of them were shootout losses. And I think some people that deserve a positive shout out here are the makeshift top line of Igor Chinakhov, Brian Rust, and Rickard Rakell. That trio just works. Rakell and Rust were struggling a little bit, particularly Rakell without Crosby. The typical top line obviously broken up in their captain's absence. But Chinakhov has jumped in and really revived them. He has 5 points in the last 4 games. Brian Rust had a 3-point night in the comeback against Carolina, where the Pens were down 4-2 with just over 2 minutes left and came back to steal a point, even though they weren't able to secure the second one with their 10th shootout loss of the season. But Brian Rust has hit the 50-point threshold for the season. And Rakell also has 5 points in the last 4 games. He has really come on strong. And I think it says a lot about those 2 veterans in Rust and Rakell, that they have stepped up to shoulder the load in Crosby's absence. And Chinakhov is just everywhere. He has unbelievably high upside. He just makes some plays with his skating that seems to just shock the opposing defense. He nearly stole a goal Tuesday against Carolina, where he just flew down the ice before Frederik Andersen was expecting him to, and Andersen had come out to play a puck. Chinakhov almost got a wide open net goal. Andersen was able to save it was able to get the puck away at the very last second. But I just think you see him create advantages with his skating. You see him create goals with his shot. We know about that wicked release. But we've also seen some really good playmaking from him recently. He's had a couple of 2-assist games in the past 4. And I just think he continues to blossom into a really, really dangerous player. Now, another guy who absolutely deserves a shout out is Anthony Mantha, somebody who's absolutely stepped up in Crosby and Malkin's absence and really all season. He's played with a lot of different line mates this season, and he's been able to produce throughout. He has 4 points in the last 3 games, including a couple of goals in the comeback win over Boston. He tied the game twice in the 3rd period. We talked about that on an earlier episode of the Post-Gazette Penguins podcast. But just want to highlight again that the guy has 24 goals and 49 points this season and hasn't missed a game all season. What an incredible signing for Kyle Dubas. And I think it shows his faith in the team that he did not cash in Mantha's pending UFA contract for what probably would have been a pretty good return. Instead, he kept Mantha on this roster to help in this playoff push. Another guy that has not been productive yet in terms of getting on the score sheet, but who has played really well over the past few games, has been Elmer Soderblom. Obviously acquired in a trade deadline deal with Detroit. The 6'8" winger had not been having a great season for the Red Wings, but he has shown some very promising signs in his first games as a Pen. Really good forechecker. He just seems to be around the net constantly, and you can see his hands. He is definitely skilled. It was shocking he didn't have a goal Tuesday against Carolina, because he had a ton of grade A scoring looks, and Andersen seemed to have his number. He made some really nice saves on Soderblom, but I think the Pens might just have something there. And, he's probably going to continue to play as Justin Brazeau is out week to week with an upper body injury. Soderblom has stepped into the lineup and, again, hasn't been able to put up a point, but I think that is coming given the way that he has played. But on the negative side, when you're playing without 2 of your biggest offensive engines, one thing you can't afford is to be defensively irresponsible. And that's something that the Pens have done over and over again in the last few games. Vegas made them pay multiple times tonight off turnovers or just careless plays in the neutral zone, or in one case, just allowing Vegas to have a man wide open in the high slot. And then when the defense reacted to that, it left a guy wide open just to Shilov's left. And he was able to pay that off for a pretty easy goal. So it's just not been the type of disciplined hockey that you need to play when scoring is going to be, or at least you would think it would be, a little bit more difficult. And so the Pens ultimately pulling out 4 points in the last 4 games without Malkin and Crosby. You're going to take that. That's not cratering your season. They've been able to largely steady the ship. And if they hadn't lost 2 more shootouts to Philadelphia and Carolina, it could look even better. But it's going to get even tougher from here. Headed to Utah, a team that's in playoff position, and then facing Colorado and Carolina in back-to-back games in the road. Those are 2 of the very best teams in the entire league. So they're going to have to scratch and claw to get a couple points, at least a couple more points out of this road trip. But I think the return for Gino, we know, is coming soon. It certainly seems like Crosby's return is coming soon as well. And I think one thing that the Pens can say is that they've continued to show off their depth in those guys' absence. They've shown the ability to continue scoring even undermanned as they are. I think with a little bit better defensive play, a little bit more responsible game, and in tonight's game particularly, a little bit better goaltending, I think they would have had even more promising results without Malkin and Crosby. But that's going to do it for the Friday edition of the Post-Gazette Penguins podcast. We'll be back early next week, likely after Malkin makes his return Monday at Colorado. And perhaps at that point, Crosby will have returned as well. But please like and subscribe wherever you're watching this. And please subscribe at post-gazette.com to get the best of our work. I'm King Jemison. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.